Okay guys, we're going to be looking at high impact pulse rifles today, essentially going over my 3 favorite high impact pulse rifles in the game. Now, the reason why we're talking about high impacts is because they're actually going to be receiving a buff next season, essentially having its damage bumped up from 21 to 22 damage per body shot, allowing this weapon to secure a kill in 5 crits in one body versus 6 crits at most resilience levels. Now, something to remember about high impact pulse rifles is they actually have one of the best time to kills in the game, sitting at approximately 0.67 seconds. Problem is landing a high impact pulse rifle that is consistent enough for you to maintain those crits. Now granted, requiring 1 less crit does definitely help this case. Adds a little bit of more forgiveness, but you're still going to want a very solid roll pulse rifle, both in its range as well as its stability, in order to secure that time to kill. Now a lot of the gameplay that you see here, we have some Premonition. This is an extremely good pulse rifle, severely overlooked, probably due to the fact that it's a difficult one to get. My roll right here actually comes with chambered compensator for that bump in recoil direction as well as stability, light mag, which is not necessarily the perk I would have chose, but it works out well here for that increase in range as well as reload speed, rangefinder for that jump there in range while aiming down sights, and kill clip. This weapon also comes with a stability masterwork. Now this is by far my favorite high impact pulse rifle in the game, even more so than Redrix, Einstein, which are going to be the other 2 pulse rifles we're going to go over. Premonition is one of the best feeling pulse rifles in the game. It's so consistent. Now it might be due to this roll, this rangefinder roll right here, and we actually individually reviewed Premonition a while back, but in terms of like the god roll to go after, I really like this roll a lot. I mean, there's not much I would change here. Kill clip substantially throws that damage up. We go from hitting a modest 34 damage per crit to 45 damage per crit, which is absolute overkill. A single burst does almost 135 damage. I know there is some slight rounding, but just know that's just from 1 burst. So when you get kill clip going on a high impact pulse rifle, it's pretty much always a guaranteed kill, whether you're hitting crit shots or body shots. It really just doesn't matter. You're doing a hell of a lot of damage. Combine that with rangefinder as well to maintain that damage at great lengths. This was a fantastic roll for me. And like I said a second ago, light mag, it kind of works in this situation simply because of kill clip, right? That increase in reload speed, I'm taking advantage of it. You know, light mag boosts range, but it also boosts that reload speed. Now I mentioned I was using chambered compensator. Chamber does 2 things. It actually gives you plus 10 stability, which is very nice on a high impact, especially for my controller players. It also adds plus 10 recoil direction. So this weapon has 77 recoil direction. With that plus 10, it throws it up to 87. No, it's not completely vertical, but as you see here, man, it's close. So yeah, you could roll it with something like arrowhead break, which would max out that recoil direction completely. I would suggest though, chambered compensator. That added bit of stability as well as recoil direction, and especially if you're rocking it with something like rangefinder that's making up for the lack of range in that barrel perk. Chamber actually works really well here. So that's my Premonition roll, guys. You know, there's a lot of different options you can go for. You could still go for a kill clip outlaw combo. That's always a good one. I've mentioned before in the past that I've always wanted to rock rangefinder and head seeker together. And considering that it's going to be 5 crits in one body, that's going to be required next season. Just know for those times that you do drift off and land a body shot, head seeker will make up for it for that increase in precision damage on those crit shots. No, it's not a ginormous amount, but it's definitely one to consider. Now, as far as the best way to secure this pulse rifle, okay, there's a few things that I want to bring up. Number 1, the Pit of Heresy dungeon is where this thing drops. And as far as I know, it's the only place that this thing drops. But there are ways to potentially increase your chance of getting a Premonition. Most notably, this consumable right here, Hymn of Desecration, greatly increase the chance of weapon drops from the Necropolis or Chamber of Suffering encounter inside the Pit of Heresy. Now, I actually have never even used this consumable. I have some. I just got really lucky when doing the dungeon, but I've had a lot of people say good things about this consumable, it increasing the chances of you getting drops, and I believe the fastest way to get this is just completing those weekly bounties from Eris. Now, moving on. We're talking about high impact pulse rifles. Obviously, we got to talk about Redrix, because as deadly as what this Premonition is, Redrix does pack a hell of a punch. Now, I've got a number of rolls. I've kept so many rolls of Redrix, and and I just don't really know where I sit. I've got max range rolls for those situations where I am on those far-reaching maps, things like full bore and ricochet rounds, range masterwork, all that good juicy stuff. I've also got other rolls that are kind of more stable, stability masterworks, rocking things like fluted barrel here for that increase in handling speed. This is more for those short range maps, right? But you got to be really careful when loading everything else outside of range on these pulse rifles, especially if it doesn't come with something like rangefinder, because any type of damage fall off will mess you up. The moment that gunfight goes from being a 2 burst to secure a kill to a 3 burst, time to kill wise, you are now at a great disadvantage against multiple weapons. And unfortunately, due to damage fall off, you can run into that situation with Redrix. Now, where Redrix makes up for that is the sheer amount of power that this weapon has. Essentially starting off just like other high impact pulse rifles at 0.67 seconds, but the moment you activate Desperado, that time to kill actually drops down to 0.47. Essentially, guys, Desperado states that reloading while Outlaw is active increases your rate of fire. This is such a unique perk, guys. Essentially throwing the rate of fire here of 340 to upwards of like 500, maybe even 540, similar to like rapid fire pulse rifles. It's extremely fast. So fast that if you're like me, you have a difficult time in tracking your opponents because it's just so much is happening. The amount of firepower that is being expended at such a fast fire rate with this weapon really takes you by surprise. But if you can learn that, it's one of the best weapons to wipe a whole team with. Get Desperado going. Anyone that tries to duel you, you'll be able to take out. Now, I have my complaints about Desperado. Here recently, while using Redrix, I noticed that there was a few times in which Redrix would proc Outlaw, but the reload speed would not represent that. It would be just so slow, resulting in me sitting there having to wait forever for my weapon to reload and Desperado to be procced. And that was another thing that's crazy, is that Desperado would still proc despite the reload speed, obviously representing that of base default Redrix reload speed. But because Outlaw was showing its status effect down below, Desperado would still, of course, proc for me. So that's the only major complaint I have with Redrix. I just thought I'd bring it up considering we also have reload nerfs that are coming. Let me know though, guys, if you've experienced similar bugs with Redrix. Now, probably the most punishing thing about using Redrix, at least from my experience, is that boxy sight, man. I cannot get over it. Those little wings on either side completely messes us up. I wish to God we had an ornament that just cleared everything in front of us and allowed us to just see what's on our screen. The problem is the moment you actually proc Desperado, you've got these blinders up, man, on either side, which makes shooting a weapon at 540 rounds per minute or higher difficult to maintain. I truly believe that if Bungie came out and was like, yo, here's a Redrix ornament that allowed us to just see what's in front of us visually, you would actually start to see more usage of Redrix. And I know that's like a crazy thing to say. The design of a gun is what's punishing it, but that's really what's actually punishing Redrix to me the most. Just not being able to see what the hell's in front of you. Now, when I actually like sit down and I stack these pulse rifles together, Redrix versus Premonition, I do find that Premonition, whether it's due to rangefinder or maybe some other external factors, Premonition performs better for me, which is kind of crazy because across the board, Redrix has superior stats. But that's what I'm saying. Like, sometimes stats aren't everything, right? Sometimes a weapon just feels good and we've got no way to explain why it feels good. In terms of landing crit after crit, for those more consistent 2 bursts, Premonition with the right roll beats out Redrix. Now, moving on to our third high impact pulse rifle. Yeah. If you've watched Cammy Cakes, you know what this one is. Einstein-D. From the gunsmith himself, and I believe that's the only way you can get it. Einstein is another high impact pulse rifle that comes with random rolls. Fellas, I thought I landed it. I thought this was the god roll, and it's good. It is a good roll, and for this weapon, it made me consider the god roll. But let's just go over it. First up, SC Hollow is our scope here. This actually gives you a bump there in zoom as well as range. Probably one of my favorite scopes on all these weapons. If you use anti-oak, you know where I'm coming from. High caliber rounds for the mag perk for that increase in flinch as well as that range. Moving target for that increase in target acquisition while moving when aiming down sights. Now let's talk about this. It almost seems counterintuitive, right? High impact frame is the intrinsic perk found on these pulse rifles. Slow firing, high damage. The weapon is also more accurate when stationary and aiming down sights. most notably while crouching. So just from the intrinsic perk, yes, high impact pulse rifles, they want you to stand still, damn near it, which kind of goes against what moving target here wants you to do. It wants you to move while aiming down sights. The way I looked at it, or at least the way I went into it, I was like, all right, I'm gonna get the added benefits of increased accuracy while crouch or standing still, but for those moments that I do have to strafe against an enemy, boom, I got moving target that will also increase that target acquisition. Now the final trait on this weapon is Zen Moment. Causing damage with this weapon increases its stability. Now Zen Moment, I've said in the past before that rapid hit was a better perk than Zen. After next season, I'm not sure that's going to be the case anymore. Rapid hit's actually getting a nerf, not only in its reload department, but also in its stability department. Zen Moment might not necessarily be better than rapid hit next season, but they'll be on par with each other. Now something I've noticed is that Zen Moment is definitely more noticeable for console users. For controller users, it's a fantastic perk. PC users, I'm still trying to figure out how much Zen actually helps us. Weapons already look naturally more stable. Rightfully so, we're rocking mouse and keyboard. Rapid hit, due to its ginormous amount of stability that it grants you, is noticeable both for a controller user as well as a mouse and keyboard user. If rapid hit is brought down to what Zen is right now, it may not be nearly as noticeable next season as it has been in previous seasons. Now, how does Einstein, or at least this role of Einstein, stack up against the other two high impact pulse rifles we just talked about? Einstein is good, but again, another situation where I feel like Premonition is just more consistent. Now, maybe it's the role. Maybe it's what I'm trying to do here that's just not working. Part of me started to think that maybe moving target wasn't the route to go. Instead, considering that high impact perk wants us to be stationary, I almost feel like Firmly Planted would have been the better route here. Maybe if you wanted to get crazy, you can go like Firmly Planted and Zen Moment together, right? Increased stability, increased accuracy. The beautiful thing about Einstein is the fact that it comes with scopes, not barrel perks. Einstein actually outranges Premonition, Redrix, and other pulse rifles due to the zoom that you get from those scopes. Part of me wants to try the role of Firmly Planted and maybe Head Seeker, maybe Firmly Planted and Kill Clip. There's a lot of different routes to go. Either way, I feel like I'm not giving Einstein its fair shake. That's probably the best role I have, but I'm definitely willing to entertain a Firmly Planted role on Einstein, as I feel like it really does have potential. It's got all the right components, man. It's got the holy trinity: zoom, range, good time to kill. It's got it, fellas. On paper, Einstein should be the best. Why my Premonition to me felt better, I don't know, man. I don't get it. But guys, that is your high impact pulse rifles that are going to be coming up next season that should be deadly. High impacts are weird, man. I've tried taking it in trials before. It didn't work well. In an elimination game mode, at least for mouse and keyboard on PC, I had a lot of difficulty with it. But for regular Crucible, for comp, especially comp, I don't know what it is. Survival, I guess because people are moving more, it's a little more chaotic. High impact pulse rifles completely takes people by surprise. They're expecting to tangle up with a sniper, but to be suddenly two bursted, a lot of people just don't know how to handle that. It's very reminiscent of high impact pulse rifles back in D1. Like every now and then, you would come across a guy using something like spare change, or what was the other one? Parthian shot. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I got some OGs in here, but you know how it was. Every now and then, you would come across somebody in like trials using a high impact pulse rifle, and they would just two burst the piss out of you. I played many games of trials. The game I remembered the most from D1 was the time I played a spare change user. He was rocking like counterbalance and some other perk, but it just made his spare change like unmovable. And one by one, he would just two burst me, my teammates, all of us before we could ever make a move on him. And it was so stupid. Couldn't do nothing. Couldn't land a snipe on him. So before we jump up and say that high impact pulse rifles don't have a place in high-end comp, just know that this weapon will absolutely reward you based on how much you commit to it. And now that it's becoming a 5 crit in one body, it's actually becoming better than what it was back in D1. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.